I came home exhausted after a long day of work. The day had been a marathon of meetings, deadlines, and difficult decisions. Upon opening the door, I was greeted by a warm aroma of home-cooked food that almost made me forget about my tiredness. However, something was different. Amanda's laughter echoed through the room, and upon entering, I found her sitting on the couch with her childhood friend, Jake. They were laughing together as if the outside world didn't exist. "Hey, love, look who came to visit me," Amanda exclaimed, with a sparkle in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a while. Jake smiled, a smile that felt more intimate than I remembered. I forced a smile, but that scene made me uncomfortable. Jake had always been a close friend, but there was something about the way they were interacting that made me uneasy. "Hi, Daniel," Jake said, standing up to greet me. "I was telling Amanda about that time we got lost on the trail during our vacation." "Yeah, and you almost starved us." Amanda laughed, lightly slapping Jake's arm. The scene bothered me, but I just let out a nervous laugh, trying to ignore the feeling that something was changing. "You were hungry? I prepared something special for us," Amanda said, winking at me. I agreed, but my mind was far away. What was so funny between them? Was I no longer part of the joke? The conversation flowed, but I was increasingly oblivious. "Hey, Daniel, how about a game? Me and you against Amanda," proposed Jake, with a provocative tone, as if he knew I was a little out of place. Amanda laughed, and it made me feel even more out of place. What were they insinuating? "Oh, I don't know. I'm tired. Maybe another time," I replied, trying to divert the topic. Amanda looked disappointed, but I didn't insist. I just sat down and tried to participate in the conversation, but the feeling of discomfort wouldn't leave me. After Jake left, the house was silent. Amanda started cleaning, while I headed to the bedroom. The bed seemed like an invitation, but my mind was racing. I lay down, and what should have been a moment of rest turned into a whirlwind of thoughts. What had changed between us? Amanda had always been my partner, my support, but now I saw her as more distant. I remembered times when she used to look at me with love, as if I were unique. But now, it felt like there was an empty space, and Jake was filling that void in a way I couldn't understand. What was happening? The idea that there could be something more between them began to consume me. An emotional betrayal? I never thought this could happen. "Daniel," Amanda's voice brought me back to reality. "Are you still awake?" "I'm here," I replied, trying to hide the confusion in my voice. "You seem distant. What is thinking?" she asked, approaching the bed. "Just tired. It was a long day," I lied, but the truth was I couldn't stop thinking about Jake and the laughs they shared. "You know he's just a friend, right? Sometimes I just need someone to vent to." Her voice had a tone of innocence, but there was something in her eyes that made me question everything. "Sure," I said, trying to stay calm. I just don't want you to forget about me." She smiled, but there was a shadow of doubt in her eyes. "I would never do that, love. You're everything to me." But as she spoke, a feeling of unease settled deeper into my heart. What I didn't know was that this conversation would be just the beginning of a series of events that would change our lives forever. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the faces gathered for breakfast. I sat at the table, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. Amanda was radiant, as always, but there was something in the way she laughed, a glow that didn't feel entirely like me. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the aroma of toasted bread was comforting, but tension hung in the air. "Good morning, my love," she said, with a smile so wide it could light up the entire city. "Jake helped me sort out some things last night. You won't believe how helpful he is." I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my heart sped up. It helped resolve some things? What kinds of things was she referring to? The phrase echoed in my mind like a bell ringing incessantly. "That's good," I replied, trying to hide the uneasiness in my voice. "What kind of things?" Amanda looked away, focusing on pouring more coffee into her cup. "Ah, personal things. You know how it is. We just talked about some issues." She smiled, but there was a hesitation in her voice. Silence fell between us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper to this friendship with Jake, something that wasn't just friendship. Her words gnawed at my mind, and I decided I needed to confront her. Amanda, don't you think you're spending too much time with Jake? I asked, trying to remain calm. She looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw the defensiveness rise in her eyes. Daniel, you are exaggerating. He's just a childhood friend. It's not like I'm doing anything wrong. But don't you feel like this friendship is crossing the line? I continued, feeling the tone of my voice rise. The way you talk about him, it seems like there's something more. Amanda sighed, running a hand through her hair. You're being insecure, love. I promise there's nothing between us. It's just that sometimes I feel more comfortable talking to him about things that, I don't know, maybe you don't understand. I was paralyzed. Do not understand? What did this mean? I felt a pang of jealousy mixed with confusion. Amanda had always been someone I trusted deeply, and now I felt like she was pulling away from me, connecting to someone else in a way I couldn't follow. Amanda, I just want you to be honest with me, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, but the vulnerability showed. Are you sure there is nothing more between you? She hesitated, and that put me on alert. Daniel, I already told you. There is nothing. Jake is just a friend. Let's stop talking about this, please. And so, the conversation was diverted, like so many others. I focused on eating, but the food tasted bitter. The coffee was cold, and I could barely swallow the bread. The once light atmosphere was now charged with palpable tension. After coffee, I picked up my phone to check messages and, to my surprise, a notification from Jake appeared. Hey Daniel, how about a threesome? Amanda and I are thinking that could be fun. The message resonated like thunder in my head. Paralyzed, I stared at the screen, reality brutally setting in. What did this mean? An invitation to an open relationship? I couldn't process what was happening. The world around me seemed to have slowed down, and the noise from the house became a distant echo. My heart raced. My mind swirled with questions. I wasn't prepared for that. A threesome date. The words repeated in my mind. Some part of me wondering if this was a bad joke, or if that was actually what was happening. In an instant, the life I knew was about to change, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face the truth unfolding before me. When Amanda arrived home that night, the atmosphere was filled with almost palpable tension. I could still feel the echo of the laughter she had shared with Jake, a sound that now seemed distant and unreal. The smile that lit up his face no longer seemed as genuine as before. Instead, a shadow of anxiety settled in my chest. She made herself comfortable on the couch, and I reluctantly sat down next to her, waiting for her to say something that would dispel her growing uneasiness. Daniel, Amanda began, her voice soft but firm. I need to talk to you about something important. My heart raced. Her tone revealed that the conversation would not be easy. Of course, what happened? I asked, trying to remain calm even though a wave of insecurity washed over me. I've been thinking a lot about us, about our relationship. She paused, looking at her hands, as if searching for the right words. I would like to open our relationship. The statement hit me like a punch in the stomach. What? Are you kidding? Disbelief took over me. You want me to share you with Jake? How can you? It's not just that, she interrupted, raising her voice. I don't want you to feel trapped. It makes me feel suffocated. I want freedom, Daniel. Don't you understand? Freedom? Do you think this is freedom? I was overcome with anger and confusion. That's cheating, Amanda. You want to open up our relationship because what? Are you already involved with him? She took a deep breath, her gaze looking away from mine. That's not how I see it. I just want to explore. I want us to have different experiences, and if you don't want to, that's fine. But I need it. Do you need this? What about me? And what do I feel? You're not thinking about me. Frustration burned in my chest. You're only thinking about yourself. Amanda lifted her head, her eyes shining with a mixture of defiance and pain. Daniel, this could help us grow. I'm just asking that we try. And if you don't want to, that's fine. But I can't go on like this. Silence hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I felt like the ground beneath my feet was crumbling. Do you really think I can accept this? That I can just stand here and watch you have fun with another guy? No, Amanda, that's not going to happen. Her expression changed, and I realized she had already made her decision. So what are you going to do? Are you going to leave me? If you don't accept this, I don't know if we can stay together. Those words cut like a knife. What I really wanted was to fight for us, for what we had built, but her proposal was a betrayal of our vows. Maybe that's what I have to do, I replied, voice shaking. If that's what you want, maybe it's best if I step aside. Daniel, she started, but I didn't want to hear any more. The pain was unbearable, and I knew I couldn't stay in a relationship where trust had dissipated. I can't do this, Amanda. I can't stay here if you're not willing to fight for what we have. Determination was building inside me, each word heavy like a burden that I was finally releasing. I'm not what you need anymore, and it's painful, but I need time to think. We need time. She was silent, her expression mixing sadness and anger. I got up and went to my room, feeling the pressure of the world on my shoulders. That dialogue had changed everything, and the echo of my own voice still resonated in my mind. What was right? What was love? And how far was I willing to go for it? That night, the pain of betrayal was no longer just a possibility. It had become a reality. And as much as I wanted to believe that everything could be fixed, the truth was that a line had been crossed. What Amanda had proposed was an invitation to freedom, but for me, it was an invitation to despair. I knew I would need to make a decision, and with each beat of my heart, the certainty became stronger. I couldn't stay any longer. The pain I felt was like a wave, rising and falling, a tide of emotions that dragged me to an unknown depth. I moved in with a friend, Carlos, in an attempt to put some distance between Amanda and myself. What should have been a refuge now became a prison of thoughts about the years I spent with her. I sat in a chair in the living room, staring at the empty walls, as memories of happy times flashed through my mind, like flashes of a life that now seemed strange. What are you thinking, Daniel? Carlos asked, interrupting my reverie. He was standing with a beer in his hand, looking at me with genuine concern. About Amanda and Jake, I replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. About how everything changed so quickly. Carlos paused, as if considering his words. She seems to be living a new life. What about you? What are you going to do? The question took me by surprise. What could I do? The urge to scream, cry, and punch the wall next to me was intense, but what would that solve? I don't know, man. I feel like I've lost control over everything. That night, as the city outside lit up, I got lost in thought. Images of Amanda and Jake together invaded my mind, like a sequence from a movie I didn't want to watch. Her smile, so familiar, now seemed like a mask that hid something dark. And those photos she posted, they were like stabs in my heart. Why did she feel so free with him and not with me? The next day, the sun came through the window, bringing a new day, but the weight of betrayal was still present. I took out my cell phone and, without thinking, opened Instagram. When I saw the photo of Amanda and Jake at a party, my hands shook. They were so close, with big smiles, so happy. The world around me disappeared. The image burned into my mind, and a seething anger began to build. She really seems to be enjoying herself, I muttered to myself, my voice breaking. What were those moments she didn't share with me? What had happened to the woman I knew? Her change was stark. Carlos entered the room, and his expression changed when he saw my contorted face. Are you well? No, I'm not okay. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Look at this. I showed him the photo, and indignation washed over his face. That's too much, man. She has no respect for you. I know, I murmured, and that's what hurts the most. What do I do now? You need to take care of yourself, Daniel. This can't end like this. You deserve better. Carlos' words echoed in my mind. But what did it mean? What did I really want? The anger that began to build in me wasn't just despair, but a spark of something more. An idea began to take shape. If Amanda was so carefree, maybe I too could find a way to free myself from this pain. That night, I found myself looking at photos of Amanda and Jake again, but now with a different perspective. Anger turned into determination. I couldn't sit still and watch all this. Something inside me began to stir, a need to act, to take control of the situation. What she did was a betrayal, and I couldn't allow it to go unpunished. Daniel, are you there? Carlos asked, pulling me back to reality. Yes, I'm here. I'm going to do something, I replied, with a new conviction in my voice. Do what? Carlos asked, a little hesitantly. I'm going to find out what's really going on between them. I'm going to understand how far her betrayal goes. Carlos looked at me, a look of concern on his face, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he nodded. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but the thought of standing by and allowing Amanda to continue her life as if nothing had happened was unbearable. Revenge was brewing in my heart, like a flame that could no longer be ignored, and I was ready to face it. The room was still filled with Amanda's scent when I decided to go to the support group. It was a strange place, but seeing other men and women sharing their stories of pain and betrayal brought me some relief. I wasn't alone, and that somehow encouraged me. The first meeting was a whirlwind of emotions. People with tears in their eyes, others laughing nervously, all trying to find a way back to themselves. Have you ever thought that betrayal is not just about the person who betrays you, but about you too? Said a man with gray hair, his gaze distant as if he was remembering a sad moment. I nodded, understanding every word he said. He continued, you need to rediscover your self-worth, your worth. Don't let betrayal define who you are. Those words reverberated through me, echoing a feeling I had lost. I started to feel stronger, more capable of facing the situation I was experiencing. Although there was still a hole in my chest, the idea of getting back on my feet began to blossom. Over the next few days, I sank into an abyss of investigation. With my knowledge of technology, I decided it was time to find out the truth about Amanda and Jake's relationship. I went on my computer and started scouring social media, looking for any clue that might help me better understand what was going on. The messages exchanged between them became my main focus. One night, as the rain fell outside, I came across a conversation history that made me feel like the ground had been ripped out from under my feet. You're everything I ever wanted, Amanda, Jake had written. I can't live without you anymore. My heart raced. Her words in response were full of emotion. I feel that way too. Daniel doesn't understand what I really need. The messages were like stabs, cutting even deeper into my wound. I felt a mixture of anger and sadness, but also a drive for action. I couldn't just leave things as they were. Amanda needed to understand what her choices were doing to me and our friends. Coming up with a revenge plan became a defense mechanism, a way to regain the control I had lost. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. With a heavy heart, I began to plan how to expose her betrayal. I thought about bringing together the mutual friends we had and, with that, putting everything in order. No one should be fooled, I muttered to myself in a moment of solitude. The thought of Amanda in a vulnerable position brought me bitter satisfaction, but I knew the truth needed to be told. Not just for me, but for everyone around her. Meanwhile, the support group became a second family. I shared my findings with them, and their reactions were a mix of support and encouragement. Do what you need to do, Daniel, said a woman who had been through a similar experience. The truth always prevails. Every day, my determination grew. I knew I couldn't go back. The Amanda I knew was getting lost in a world I no longer recognized. And, as much as it hurt me, I needed to act. What she had done was not only a betrayal of our marriage, but a betrayal of everyone who loved her. And so, with a plan in mind and a new sense of purpose, I prepared myself for the confrontation that would come. The pain was still there, but now there was a spark of hope in my heart. The hope that by exposing the truth, I could finally set myself free. The birthday party was in full swing when I walked in. The sound of electronic music reverberated off the walls, and the lights flashed in a frenetic dance. The smell of food and drink filled my nose, but what really consumed me was the anxiety that was growing inside me. My mind was racing a mile a minute, filled with painful memories and the knowledge that I was about to take a step that would change my life forever. I looked around and saw some familiar faces, but the one that caught my attention the most was Amanda, laughing and talking to Jake, as if nothing had happened between us. A wave of anger and sadness washed over me, but I took a deep breath. The support group I attended had encouraged me to take a stand. It was time to expose the truth. With my heart racing, I approached a corner of the room, where I had put together a little scheme with the help of some friends. They knew what I intended to do, and were ready to support me. What I didn't expect was the feeling of power that grew inside me. I was no longer the victim. I was the protagonist of my own story. When I picked up my cell phone and opened the messages I had saved, an almost deafening silence took over the room. I looked at Amanda, who now seemed to realize that something was about to happen. She looked away, but it was too late. I already had everyone's attention. "Guys, I need you to hear this," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "Amanda and Jake have something more than just friendship." I showed him the text messages, each word a stab at his heart. These are some of the conversations they had, where the betrayal is clear and undeniable. The murmur among the guests began to grow, and I could see the look of shock on Amanda's face. She tried to defend herself, standing up quickly and gesturing. "Daniel, wait. This is not what it seems. You cannot do that." His voice was full of despair, but I was no longer willing to listen to his justifications. "It's not what it looks like. What else could it be, Amanda? You betrayed me, and now you want to play the victim?" I replied, anger and pain mixing in every word. "You destroyed our marriage, and now you're here, like nothing happened?" Jake, who until then had remained silent, began to walk away. The look we exchanged was enough for me to see the guilt on his face. He wasn't just a friend. He was a traitor. He turned and left the party, leaving Amanda alone and exposed. The atmosphere was heavy, and the disapproving look from both of their friends weighed on her. Amanda's expression changed from anger to despair. "Daniel, please. I just wanted to be happy. You can't leave me like this." His voice was choked, and the pain reflected in his eyes was palpable. But something inside me had broken, and I couldn't go back. "You had your chance to be happy by my side, and you threw it away. Now it's time to face the consequences," I declared, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with the pain. I was no longer trapped by the emotional manipulation she had imposed on me. I was free. As the party continued, people began to disperse. Some friends came over to congratulate me, while others tried to console Amanda, who was now alone, with her head bowed. I didn't care anymore. With a shy smile, I turned away from the commotion and headed for the exit. Life offered me a new chance, a new beginning. With each step he took, he felt the weight of betrayal dissipate, leaving space for something lighter and more promising. I was finally free, and the revenge I sought had turned into a pure form of justice.